Так, подскажите, пожалуйста, все, звук есть. У нас 14:00 по уфимскому времени, 12:00 по московскому, поэтому по графику мы начинаем наш сегодняшний разговор. Меня зовут Сергей Гладких, я представляю Уфимский государственный нефтяно-технический университет и руковожу Евразийским климатическим консорциумом, в который входят несколько десятков организаций, университеты, научные центры, коммерческие компании. Ну и, соответственно, сегодня мы будем говорить о современной климатической повестке, о том, что на сегодня происходит в России и в мире с учетом парниковых газов, с мероприятием по компенсации выбросов парниковых газов. У нас, наверное, достаточно интересный будет разговор, потому что очень часто возникает вопрос, а как вообще вся эта история работает именно в современных условиях, когда у нас непонятные отношения там, с Европой, США, с другими странами. Вот, поэтому точно есть о чем поговорить. Ну и, собственно, у нас сегодня вот будет разговор там, на 1,5-2 часа, в ходе которого несколько спикеров расскажут свое понимание текущей ситуации. У вас будет возможность задать вопросы, будет возможность все это обсудить. Ну, я думаю, что всем будет интересно и полезно. К нам уже успели подойти представители прессы, спрашивают, а что такого уникального в нашем сегодняшнем мероприятии?
Asking us what's interesting here. We have an announcement of a very important event for Russia and for the Republic, the news, which we will report on, and we are prepared to start. Part of our speakers is present here offline, and part of those who are going to share their experience are online with us, so it's a hybrid format. I hope that everyone will hear and see everything. Okay, we start. First, I would like to ask, as a moderator, I will make a brief review what we do here in Bashkortostan Republic and in our climate consortium. And I would like to start with the story we are going to share with you. Started about 2 years ago, and it started from setting up our objectives from the point of view of business. We studied the potential of Bashkortostan Republic in order to understand how the Republic, from the point of view of real economy, looks at the modern climate map. What is there in the region? What are the opportunities? What's possible? What are the challenges? And here you can see some figures which may be interesting to you, is that several million of hectares can be used for various environmental projects. It's one of the suitable Russian regions for climate issues solution. On the one hand, we have a lot of land resources. On the other hand, we have rather suitable climate conditions and geographically. And from the point of infrastructure, we are quite conveniently located, and one can travel easily here to watch what is happening on. And 2 years ago, we discussed that the Bashkortostan Republic, if the work is effective, can cover about 10% of all the climate challenges of the Russian Federation. And here are some important focuses for our republic so that the region is efficient in the current environmental agenda. As soon as our science, includes our scientific resources, include some researchers on catching the emission, carbon-containing emissions. And in fact, the most important thing here to mention is that the Republic is offers quite a complex project to implement this environmental story. The Climate Consortium includes several dozens of researchers, around a couple of dozens of doctors of sciences, so the personnel, the staff is quite well educated. It includes several dozens of organizations which take part in this program. Our consortium is open for all the participants, and all those who today will find it interesting can join us, and we are prepared to any partnerships to implement any possible projects. As to the climate program of Bashkortostan, one should mention several other directions and objectives. Apart from the technological agenda, we need to mention the following. About 40 climate projects already been operating here in Bashkortostan, and we are planning to reach the carbon neutrality of the region very soon, and all the natural resources of the Republic will be compensated, and we will perhaps become the first Russian region which will achieve the carbon neutrality. And today we are going to tell you how we plan to move in this direction. The carbon polygon site in Bashkortostan was started in October 21, and perhaps Alexander will tell you in more detail about it, about its ideology. And here we should mention that this project has a rather serious funding and a rather serious approach. We have the equipment, very new equipment, and we can provide this work on decarbonization of the region. We can supply it with specially trained specialists and experts. The goals and objectives of our site, of carbon sites, we focus on the real sector of economy, and our task is from the research to the applied solutions which will be required by the country and the region. Already now we cooperate with some representatives of large businesses and each research team, and today we have several dozens of research teams which are united by this research program. Each team has its own objectives which further can be offered to the businesses for solution of specific tasks and objectives. So we have several pilot sites, and here we collect the data for camera processing, and the number of these sites is not limited. In our program, we can extend it, and so we can ask your potential partners if you are interested in extension of our activity. We are prepared to get new sites involved in our program, and we are also prepared to share our knowledge and practices with other good practices with other regions, and we can even think of some joint projects. As to the research objectives, here, if we are speaking about separate objectives, we need to mention the role of the projects related to digital technologies. We understand that, well, we are not able to place this research equipment in each forest or on each field. Then we need to develop this system to monitor the greenhouse gases emissions, and perhaps this is one of the most promising directions of our work. And we should also mention that here you can see on this slide that each objective is followed by several research organizations and business partners. If we are speaking about our Eurasian consortium and carbon polygon carbon site, we can see that each of the tasks is been followed by a number of research teams because there are interdisciplinary relations. It's an interdisciplinary project, and it works the way it should work. Another thing I would like to mention today for our guests, it is that we got rather substantial support from the Republic. We have a regional grant for 75 million rubles. And for those participants who are from this Republic, it emphasizes a serious approach of our government, the Republican government, to this problem. So if you plan to work in this field, you may hope that your work will be supported. And for other regions, where I would like just to show that this work is built very well and is supported by the Republican government. The next option I should mention is that our university, as the leader of the consortium, is included in the regional priority program, Decarbonization Technologies 21-22. We, within this project, there are around 40 projects. 10 of them are research projects, and 18 are educational programs, 6 laboratories and scientific tracks. And we also invite our colleagues from other universities and research centers, and it's a very convenient a moment that now, because now we are making our plans for 2023, and if you do not belong to our university but have some experience or intentions, we are prepared to talk to any university to think of a joint project which may be funded out of our grants and of our funds. Here we have our plans in the field of educational activity. As soon as we are at the business forum, I would like to say that already now we have prepared and started several programs, main programs and additional programs related to the climate agenda. But for your demands, for your requirements, we can develop any program and train the specialists of necessary qualification together with our partners or on our own. And our plans here and the events which have been fulfilled related to integration with other businesses and teams. Well, what should I mention here? We are one of the sections on this big forum, but in our plan, we have a plan of setting up a bigger forum devoted specifically to this agenda here. And if you are interested to have a large platform for discussion of the climate issues, then we also are prepared to consider the cooperation. A little bit of advertising here. In due time, we did the Telegram channel, Carbon Polygon, where we start collecting important events and related to the environmental agenda. And to now, this channel is led together with the Ministry of Training, of Education of the Russian Federation, and we are prepared to follow all the events related to this on Telegram, and in order to be useful for you as well. And I would also like to mention another group of climate projects. It's important to mention that to this work we attract not only the students, but also some children under the UNESCO auspices. And we are prepared to talk to you. These are our contacts. We will be happy to meet you, to discuss any issues with you. This was an introductory word of mine. kind of an invitation to cooperation, but now the main goal of our meeting today is to find an agreement with you related to our joint work in 2023. If you have any questions to me, I'm here to answer you. If not, then we will proceed with other speeches.
Скажите, пожалуйста, онлайн какие-то вопросы есть? Нет?
Are there any questions online? Okay, not yet. Then I give the floor to our next speaker, our respected guest from Moscow, professor of MGU and the member of Expert Council at the Ministry of Education of the Russian Federation, the one who is one of the ideologists of the program of carbon polygons, and we would like to hear what is happening in this area and your opinion, your vision, what is going to happen with these carbon sites, dumps.
Good morning, dear colleagues. I'm really glad to see you at this forum, and I'm really glad to be here in Ufa. Let me stop shortly on my topic that has been already presented to you on the modern climatic agenda. About the program of carbon dumps. So what was the problem? Let me just tell you a little bit more. The problem is the following: that it is that modern change of climate is influencing harder on the economy and on the humanity. First of all, it's related to the rapid growth of the global temperature that for the last decade reached of the quarter of degree, and in Russia it reached half degree, and all over the globe it's 1.1 degree, comparing with the period that happened before. And the level is approximately 14 degrees, that is optimal temperature. On the ocean is above the ocean is a little bit less, and above the land it is also a little bit less. And type of rains and other very extreme types of weather that cause heavy on the lifestyle of the humanity and our nature. You can see that all over the globe. You can see the rapid chain growth of the heat waves. Besides that, there is a possibility of having another climatic changes. If we can see some of the project for the future, and if we'll see what's going to happen on the territory of Russia in the following 50, 80 years, you can notice that we have different climatic scenarios. The temperature is probably going to increase, and beside on the growth of the temperature, we see the change. You can try to look at it's to the south of the Russia. It's covered with the red and yellow colors. They are negative, and which says that as the temperature increases, the dry will increase, and it will not lead to any good consequences. You can check the Astrakhan region, Kalmykia, Dagestan. They are, you see the deserts is coming, and we lose a lot of green spaces. If we speak about the causes of the appearing of such anomalies, the problem is that the hardest anomalies for the last decade are related to historical periods. Lots of historians related to the concentration of the gases. You can see on the slide that the growth of the carbon dioxide grew, and we can notice that for the last million years, and the amount of methane and nitrogen increases. So where is it coming from in the atmosphere? Significantly, the carbon dioxide goes to the atmosphere from the surface of the ground, and some of parts of the ocean also can absorb the gas. But with the carbonite, that methane, with the nitrogen, that goes from the aborigine sources. Unfortunately, our nature, could not handle it, and that is the biggest problem. There are a lot of sources of anthropogenic sources. It's oil burning, biomass burning, agricultural burning, livestock farming. Also are the sources of the carbon gases. Also the dumpsters. And if we work in a frame of this agenda, there is a whole lot of questions, and humanity starting with the last century, try to fight with those emissions. And here we can remember the Kiev's Protocol or Paris Agreement, and the basis of which there is a requirement to try to save the growth of the global temperature not more than 2 degrees, and save it a little bit less than 1.5 degrees, because temperature has grown to up to more than 1.1 degree. Russia agreed, verified with the agreement and with these factors. There was a report of the President of the Russian Federation on the educational policy of the Russian Federation, where they discuss the studying of the climate and the balance of the social economy of Russia, of the Russian Federation, with the low amount of emissions. And the strategy of the low carbon emission development, that is called decarbonization. It's transferred to the global energy and decreasing the neutrality. And I think by the 2030, the Republic of Bashkortostan tries to reach those goals earlier. And in general, it is said that we try to take in terms measures to save the ecosystem. The potential of the ecosystem are higher because because this technology is pretty attractive and is less expensive, in comparison with other schemes of the low carbonide emission. And going to the polygons and about the carbon polygons dumps, including to determine how the ecosystem of the Russian Federation absorbs the emission. Strangely, but such information in detail, stations of monitoring. I'm not talking about only about carbon dioxide. Unfortunately, in Russia, it does not exist. We have huge failure of knowledge in that sphere, and including our policy on the international level, because those valuations that we send to the experts are based of the carbonide emissions are low, and nature ecosystem gives a bit more than we were thinking. And the main element, we need to have to implement something, and we need to work on the technological solutions of the greenhouse emissions, and we cannot solve it with some ground equipment. So if we take into consideration the whole structure of the monitoring system, we can use the satellite system and land system, or the complex of the studying the emission of like the greenhouse effect and the greenery. And without such a complex, we cannot solve those issues. And I would like to pay your attention on for the next points, and what are the possibilities that exist to solve these, including reducing the emission and increasing the absorbing capabilities. One of the popular decisions are to grow highly productive grows, which are Pavlonia. What else? It's recover of the anthropogenic ground, for example, or watering the the topic is really interesting, and it needs to be discussed because the swamps are the huge accumulators, batteries, and we need to recover the forests. And for the last year, you cut so much wood that it's really becomes scary. All over the world, including the European community, it took that problem into the consideration really seriously. So the one controversial element is that sea aquatoriums and plant growing and feeder shrimps get developed. That is a very controversial technology that unfortunately we cannot be solved by the magic chests of the magic wand. Not taking some other reverse effects. There are some difficulties here because the people who make decision and science are a little bit separated in that matter. And what is important for the Republic of Bashkortostan, I think, is a recultivation of our land, and a huge power can be recovery of the forest and the regenerative agricultural sector. And there is a huge potential in it, I think, in the Republic of Bashkortostan. Probably I wasted a little more time, but thank you anyway.
Are there any questions to our first speaker here in our room or online? Can you please, Alexander, tell us how you can see the development of the program of the development of carbon dumps in the coming couple of years? Well, they're going to be developed, and perhaps you heard about the program called, very briefly, VIP Kazan, which is funded by the Ministry of Economic Development, and in particular, it is very close to the program of carbon polygons or dumps, and there is a kind of distinction here. The Kazan program will be oriented over the monitoring, and the carbon dumps program will perhaps will focus on both monitoring and the increase of the consumption ability of the natural systems on decrease of emissions. And here we still have many points which can be argued, and the program is going to live safely, at least during the year 2023. This carbon dumps plant nature is region, or, well, there is a trend that currently, at least in the framework of the Expert Council, there was a map developed of a map of representative landscapes of the Russian Federation, of some territories which are identified by climate conditions, by the planting, by the soils. These are integrated units which have to unite all the efforts of the local and regional and administrative centers for identification of actions. And these landscaping units are not related directly to the republics or regions. They may be even divided by half, but it may include these landscaping complexes, and the funding may be reoriented towards the regional, not to the regional centers, but to this type of complexes. But it's just words at the moment. In reality, this type of policy, of having its own carbon range or carbon dump in each region, this policy will stay for some time at least. Well, Alexander, my question is: any development is going through the stage of laboratory testing, then some testing in practice, and then operational stage? And what planting? What is the best consumption units? What are they? Can we already start creating these carbon farms, or there still are the researches going on? The researches are going on. Well, they go on, and there are several concepts. If you take some ready cultures which are adopted and have high productivity for consumption of emissions, perhaps you were in Moscow, in Tver regions in Russia. There is a very good sample of highly productive planting, and many farms do not know what to do with it. You have to be very careful in solving this issue, this problem, because perhaps it makes sense to focus on the local types of the best adopted local plants, and it then may cost lower, cost less, and be more productive. Well, if we take this mice example from our history, yes, I hope very much and try to try to resist some actions, but it's not always that we take decisions. There are some people who take these decisions. Well, in the very beginning, you mentioned that climate problems are global problems, and in our difficult times, not simple geopolitical times, how do we look and follow some other countries within this climate agenda? Yes, it's a very good question. The situation is really complex and really difficult. As far as I know, there is a negotiation going on the trade with these carbon loans with China, on the monetary level with Kazakhstan as well, with Europe. So far, it's going to be hard, and I'm not sure that we will be led there. But nevertheless, we need to move, because the environmental problem is our problem, and it's not in vain that I showed you the slide with the increase of the temperatures and dry weathers. We are not going to seed mice above the polar circle, although there are some hot heads, so to say. Especially in the southern regions of our country, we need to have some problems in growing the agricultural products. And we certainly need to work here. China, for instance, is planning to plant a lot of areas with wooded plants, huge territories, and this is the plan of thousands square kilometers. The same is planned in Europe. I believe that in this case it may be possible, and maybe it's worth to join this strategy, because, and not just to focus on some speculationary projects which are advertised on TV or somewhere else. And here, in international relations, we have at the next speech here online, and we have the timing, and there is a speaker who will continue talking on the question which has been just asked. Mr. Maksuta from Japan, he's working in the National Institute of the Study of Environment in Japan. Shamil Shavratovich, we can see you, and you perhaps heard our discussion, what we shall do as concerns the research of this climate agenda on the international level, and we would like to hear your opinion as Russia is going to cooperate with the scientists from other countries.
Thank you for everyone for letting me participate during the conference. Can you hear me well? Yes, of course we can hear you very well. Thank you. On your question, it's really hard for me to formulate or to say something originally. Probably the situation now is pretty complex on the participation of the international scientific community on the discussion. I can see some really hard, but there are some political limitations, not for the scientific community, but on the government of some countries. There will be some hard times on the part of economic interaction, and probably, as Valentin Alexandrovich mentioned, probably we have to get some loans with the friendly countries, because there is a climatic agenda and the task to reduce the emissions. They are still actual, and they are still important for Russia, and the level of economical interaction with the Western countries. That's why we need to keep working on adaptation to climatic change, and of course on the technologies that are fits for the current climatic situation, and to the climatic situation in the future, and possibly to work on this research of the effective technology on increasing the absorption of the greenhouse effects, or the panic of the carbon polygons, and some polygon projects. I mean, the dumps. I'm not talking about only on the observation of the absorption, but to release the projects on the listing and the participation of with loans. And from my own experience, I'd like to point out on my presentation. So I can't hear. Maxim Shauradovich, Shamil, we can hear you very well. Well, I already told you my opinion. What do you want me to do? Switch on the presentation? Well, take a look. It's up to you. You can do it as you wish. If you have a presentation, we will watch it happily, and if not, we would like to hear how this work is done in Japan, because they have the international experience for our hearers and the students, our audience. And how do you research and what projects are released in there? Well, in Japan, as just like as in any other country, They talk about climatic projects on, for example, forest recovery abroad somewhere, Southeast Asia, where's the potential for forest growth and or forest harvesting. They also have such projects in Australia. Japanese companies from Japan, they invest in such projects, and they, as well as many other companies of the countries from the other countries, they search for the possibilities to harvest the forests, and of course they receive some loans on it. There is not much volume, but at least they're doing it. And the part that interests me the most is oil and gas complex. There is also work to be done on the reduction of the emission, and in that relation there is a lot of work. I can show you my presentation, by the way, on this issue. Since I started, maybe I should switch it on. Okay. Well, I just need to switch it on to show it to you. Moderators, please, can you assist? Yes, we can see your presentation now. Are you showing it online? Yes, we can see it on the screen, but I can see it. Okay, anyway. And what shall I do to see my own presentation? Okay, I can see now. All right, switch on the next slide, please. Well, I'd like to point out two moments in my presentation. What are the possibilities and technological possibilities to adapt the climate change, including the questions of the freezery in Siberia and the types of reduction of the emission gases in the international technological or oil and gas sector. Next slide, please. We know that the climate heating reached 1 degree comparing to the indicators that we had 150 years ago, and that warmth leads to aridization and other effects, and that warming can relate it to by scientists with gas emissions. That's why there was a decision to fight those emissions, the greenhouse effect. And with the climate warmth, what do we have in Russia, including in Siberia? Next slide, please. That's the interesting connection between what's happening in the scientific community and what do we have. The Nobel Prize on Physics last year was given for the works on the climate changes to the professor of the Princeton University and employee of the geophysical laboratory, to Professor Sukuro Manabe. And what it did so interesting in 1970, he predicted that with the climate warming, dry regions will become drier and wet regions will become wetter. And in Russia, the bad thing is those wet regions will be wetter. Why? So during the winter we're going to have more snow, and the result can be observed on the south of Taiga of the western Siberia, and we have increase of the surface temperatures. For example, the swamps stopped to freeze, and if you could put a path through the swamp, for example, somewhere in Vasugansk, and it was possible to work during the winter time, and now it is impossible, unfortunately. Next slide. The other issue for the freezing is to keep the freezer in the frozen state. It's necessary to conduct the agricultural business and the ground during the winter time, which was mentioned a lot of years ago. It leads to these effects of the global warming for Siberia, and it gets more strength when freeze during the summertime defreezes, and it's not freezes during that much during the winter time. I mean, melting and melting of the freeze. It's crosses with the map of our projects of some oil maps. So we should take into the consideration the necessity of acknowledging the processes of the freeze degradation and what is has to be done by what is for the potential of the Russia of Bashkortostan, because it's connected to with the oil and gas complex, and we should understand how we should implement into the technology of construction projecting of the oil and gas projects in Siberia, taking into account the changes of the state of the freeze. And Asokin says that by the 2010, fundament of the water reduced for the 40%, and in Irkutsk for 20%. And such facts on the influence of the climate change on the freeze, where the construction of the oil and gas construction projects happened, the outcome will be that they should
climate warming has to be accounted in the construction technologies and production of infrastructural objects. Well, there are some interesting examples, like this one. It's a little bit extreme. It's the land dump in Yakutia, which was formed due to the melting of frozen land. The Batagai dump, which has reached a certain size already, and it happened because dozens and hundreds of meters down the soil and the ground is filled with this ice, and when it starts melting, it destroys the landscape, in fact. And here, another moment I would like to dwell on for gas and oil sector is the economy of emissions reduction due to the reduction of the leakages of natural gas. The International Energy Agency here made an evaluation that the majority of these emissions may be reduced due to practically free of charge, and because it is going to be paid off by the sold natural gas. And this evaluation was made with account of old prices for gas, and in principle, this evaluation will shift a little bit towards the bigger volumes, but here they mean that half of the gas leakages can be compensated due to the investment into the measures on leakages reduction. On the next slide, I will make a comment on this. The current situation in gas and oil sector in Canada looks as follows. They made a research. The employees of the Center of the Environmental Defense, they have published quite interesting data. For instance, if you have the object, a separator which separates oil and water and accompanying gas, it has the pumps, the pressure regulators, etc., etc. And all of them are somehow producing gas emissions from 1 cubic meter from half a cubic meter of gas to 1 cubic meter of gas per hour. And it's happening over actually everywhere. And the agency in Canada requires them to reduce these emissions till 2023. And after adopting this directive, it was found out that more than 80% of the equipment was actually exchanged by the equipment which reduces these leakages, and it's quite popular technically and politically to show the reduction of these leakages. For compatibility of our products, such as gas and other products, it can be interesting, for instance, when we are speaking about the reduction of leakages of the accompanying industries, which produces the equipment for oil and gas industry, it can be an additional source of income, the development of such devices with low leakages levels. And the last slide is the conclusion, actually. So concluding, I would like to mention that melting of these frozen areas and the increase of winter precipitations, what is happening today, has to be accounted in planning of economic activity. It's for the developers of various projects, including the oil and gas sector as well. Here you must consider the issues on the possibility of developing of new types of equipment which would satisfy the requirements on low leakages. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. What are the questions? There was a question over there. Vladimir Shogulev, my question was to Alexander, but as soon as we have here a speaker from Japan, I would like to ask him. There is the weed plant, and there are 19 types of these weeds, and you can smoke it, but weed, and it is prohibited. But this weed provides much more oxygen. Is it planned, for instance, in Japan, to do some testing, planting of weeds to fix this influence? The quarry which you showed, it was handmade, and there was some, so to say, smart guy who decided to cut some wood there, and now this quarry is being used as a model for monitoring the situation. And as to the oil industry, if you go outside Ufar, you can see a lot of emissions, and it's just incredible. Many people know about the Black Sea, but few people know that annually 400 billions of cubic meters of methane are being emitted by the Black Sea, and there are underwater craters in Georgia, for instance. Near Georgia, there is a source which is emitting 170,000 cubic meters of methane per day. So all the measures which were mentioned by you, well, cannot be just compared to the Black Sea. Yeah, well, we understand that we need to do something about it, but first of all, we need to change the technologies in our plants. Thank you. May I answer the question? Maybe. Your last question related to the Black Sea emissions. It's a very substantial problem, and all the shallow zone and the ocean zones can be related to this because there's a lot of emissions. But this is a natural factor, in fact, and the Black Sea, 10,000, well, let's say, 5,000 or 6,000 years ago, in the middle of Holocenic period, was also producing methane emissions, and in practice, the balance did not change drastically or substantially. It was compensated by the natural systems, and anthropogenic factors cannot be, at least now, cannot be compensated. May I add a couple of words? Well, in principle, as to the Black Sea, you are quite right, but we have some wood fires. In 2021, we had 20 million cubic meters, more than 20 million cubic meters of woods, which was on fire, and we do not want to stop these fires and do not much in this relation, and it's a lot, it produces a lot of emission, yes, and these burnt forests are not even restored, and it provides a substantial influence on climate. On the one hand, it's an emission, and the features of the surfaces are being changed, and there are air, and we lose biomass, and there's a lot of methane and carbon in the air, and in fact, the woods are also making another important factor. They are the source of the water vapor. We are all speaking about the greenhouse effect, but there is also the albedo effect, which is due to this vapor effect. So they create clouds, and albedo appears, and this water, is cooling the surface sufficiently. So one effect is working for heating, for warming, and another one is working for cooling. And this is a big problem we have to deal with, and I'm not sticking to the concept that some people think that it's great that the forests burn and it's good, and they say that with the growth of greenhouse gases, the carbon emission problem or the warming problem will be solved. I do not stick to this. I do not support this opinion. The volume of oxygen on this planet is being reduced. I agree with you. Okay, the floor is, there were several questions to me, for instance, as to the weed. Now, as far as I understand, as to the investments to such agricultural ways of reduction of emissions. The first thing is woods, and the technologies, intensive technologies, for instance, to use those woods which are growing very fast, like bamboo, which is popular and new technology. The second thing is heating, biofuel, using the cultures which have a high level of productivity in certain areas of the world. But certainly, it's hard to find sufficient land for planting these plants, and now they extend in the South America, for instance, they extend the lands used for growing plants. They have now a problem of using the wooded areas for planting these cultures. In Russia, there are no such projects because the productivity per hectare in the southern areas is much higher, so we do not yet reach this level. And even if you seed woods on these areas, then you can get some positive effect, maybe not in the volumes like in the south as relates to planting. As to methane, geological methane, the situation is as follows. There's a lot of methane on the bottom of the ocean, and it's emitted, but very often it doesn't reach the top, the surface of the ocean, because it's a feeding element of the ocean, so it's consumed before it reaches the surface of the sea. It looks like that. Okay, thank you very much. And now we transfer to the next speaker, Miss Adele Lebedeva. And while she's getting online, I want to say that it's not always that we can measure, we can measure the volumes of greenhouse emissions, but we cannot always prove this. Adele Vilyevna is the Deputy Director of the National Institute of Accreditation, and she will tell us how the bodies dealing with accreditation may influence the issues we are discussing at the moment. We can see your presentation.
Так, но мы вас не слышим.
But we cannot hear you so far. Oh, now we can hear you. Well, dear colleagues, good day. In the first place, let me thank the organizers of this conference, the Ministry of Industry of the Republic of Bashkortostan and the Oil Technical University from Ufa for organization of this geological conference. And let me use the chance to congratulate Mr. Alexander Muratchin who celebrated 120 years anniversary. Now, back to my presentation.
It's taken for many years, including the inventariization of the greenhouse gases, and on the national level and during the formation of their application on the greenhouse gases, companies usually follow the approved practices and use national practices that identifies with the national standards. For example, to form the report on the greenhouse emission, we use the national standard GOST ISO 14046/1/2021, and to trace the carbonite trace, we use the 14067 to form the projects on the reduction of the greenhouse gases and increasing and of the absorption. We use the national standard GOST R ISO 14046. Using the analogs of the international standards allows us to control the greenhouse gases and take different approaches, and provided one of the necessary so for the users of the ecological information, it's really important to know that is very proof trustworthy, and trust verified reports gives us the trust. The process of verification is done with the verification with the standard, with the national standard GOST R ISO 14046, which is identical to the ISO 14046 Part 3. Two types of the both direction, the validation and verification, depends on the chronologic on the greenhouse gases, and the reports that related to the future of their usage and their predictions for the future. Such direction, that such assessment is the proof of the trustworthy, and the application of the greenhouse gas, which says is for the results that we have already received, and which we call the approval of truth. And to trust the reports, we need independent experts. So appearance of the national system of accreditation, such as agencies of validation verification that happened at the end of 2021, and that event was the response for the needs of the government and of the people, and the different projects that appeared thanks to legislation on the limitation of the emission of the greenhouse gases, and need to get the accurate reports. So Legislation Institute of Accreditation works on different countries and lets us to control the situation. National system of accreditation of Russian Federation today is the infrastructure of trust between the business and the government and the society, where the main goal is to increase the quality of life and keep the environment safe. Accreditation and control of the accredited persona and all the workers and the system is provided by the National Agency of Accreditation. It's a federal agency of accreditation, and it has a short name, ROS Accreditation. The regulator of the is the Ministry of Economical Development of the Russian Federation, which does the normatives for this accreditation, including the legislation development and the rules for accreditation and the requirements for the accredited persona. Now, to get their accreditation, national system of accreditation of the validation agencies must, beside the requirements that were determined by the GOST, have to compel with the requirements that was set by the national standards. Now accreditation is determined by the order of the Ministry of Economy 707 of the 16th of October of 2022, and how to implement it. Agency for validation verification and have to follow the criteria of the Ministry of Economy of Development, work with the GOST ISO 14065, do the validation and the verificators according to GOST ISO 14066, and follow the principles and methods according to GOST R ISO 14074. And I want to underline that to provide the international approval, we and we need to implement and we try to harmonize it with the international requirements and rules. And due to International Organization for Standardization release new standards for that, such as validation and verification of the greenhouse gases emission effect. And thus we expect to implementation of the new standards that will determine the control of those gas emissions, and that will lead to a transfer to the further of on the 1st December we have a new standard ISO 17029, which it's a new thing that was developed with the International Organization of the Standardization, like a new type of assessment of and the standard that sets the principles and requirements to the agencies of identification and verification. Since the 1st January of 2023, we have the new version of the national standard of ISO 14065. That's a standard that, in addition to ISO 17029, will set the requirements more detailed that are related to validation and verification of ecological information. That's why agencies of validation and verification of gas emission effect, after changing all the criteria, have to be certified accordingly to the standards that consist of a government and national standard ISO 17029 and national standard 14065. And anyway, it have to have some transferring period because jurisdictional personnel that already received the accreditation before, and since the January 2022 we have new ISO 14064 Part 3, the standard that determines the on the validation and verification, and thus standards have to maybe implemented on a good right, and the agencies of verification jurisdictions that receive such accreditation have the validation verification on the emission gas emission will do according to these standards. And the most important thing is that the procedure of accreditation allows to create necessary conditions to approve the emission of verification and
one of the promising directions is the development of unified standards on the territory of Eurasian Union, setting up the system of support for training of specialists, continuous training, and the experience of those who have already spoken here. It is going to be very important because among 5 countries, the first, Kazakhstan was the first to start dealing with validation and verification of greenhouse emissions and all this information, and there are some specifics in legislation in each country, but nevertheless it's possible to organize the training tours and best practices exchanges and sharing among the countries of the Union. And so within the Eurasian Union, these are still projects and not yet there are not yet decisions made in the part of validation and specification of greenhouse gases, but we hope that they will be taken. I would like to draw your attention that the system of accreditation has been adopted in Russia in 2021, and it was implemented in specific, immediately with the international requirements to it, and we managed to implement the requirements on validation and accreditation in this system, and the set of all the requirements on the recognition of EMLA, MLA has been implemented there. We can consider the possibilities of there is some time framework, but nevertheless, Russia may join the initiative on multilateral recognition of these systems of the carbon reporting of the Russian companies, also those being the members of EF, the ROS accreditation may continue this work, and when this recognition will be approved, then our organization will give the right to use a sign which confirms the validation, as in those countries which have signed this agreement on validation and certification. Thank you very much. If there are questions, I suggest to discuss them in one more presentation, because we have another presentation by Elena Viktorovna Savinkova, the director of the International Institute for the Development of Strategic strategic development of industry-based economies. And she will be speaking about the issues on change of environment, etc., etc. We can see you, Elena. Good day, dear colleagues. Let me thank you for the invitation to such important conference, and thank the industry of the Ministry of Industry of the Republic of Bashkortostan. I've been following this meeting also in person, and heard a lot of interesting things, and have certain plans and in this relation. And now I'm going to make my own presentation. Can you see it? Not yet.
Пока не видим. Видно, да?
Нет пока.
Опять не видно.
Так, модератор, подскажите, пожалуйста, что нам нужно сделать?
Well, what shall we do to see the presentation?
Ну да.
Okay.
Давайте мы сами включим вашу презентацию.
We will put on your presentation now part. Okay, do it.
Мы можем запустить презентацию и ее перелистывать от нас отсюда, да?
Да, конечно.
Так, все, мы видим вашу презентацию.
We can see it.
Так, а первую страничку можно?
Well, the very first slide. Thank you. The presentation about the role of higher school in provision of continuous education of the employees involved in the security of environment. What are the basic principles of our organization and of modern universities which are involved in economic security of ecological issues in the framework of the Institute of University of People's Friendship? We do not only do some researchers and train the people. So in the framework of our institute operation, well, the professors and trainers make around 80 professionals in the fields of sustainable development and environmental issues, and we organize the educational programs at the university. This is a modern program which is interdisciplinary program, allowing to manage the risks. We work in bachelor, master degrees, provide the trainings, etc., etc. And now we develop the programs on specialties. What are the main educational programs in the framework of this direction? Modeling and focusing of environmental processes, city ecology, bioengineering, etc. And we have more than 500 students at our university. There are a lot of budgets places at the university. The master degree involves the modeling and focusing of ecological processes in economy, also applied mathematics, bioengineering, expertise in ecological security and sustainable development. The students may learn how to manage the economic effectiveness of the projects in the field of environment, how to calculate the emissions, etc., etc. It's practice-focused programs, and they are quite successful. Also, housing systems involves a new program. We have opened this year the program in ecological engineering, in construction together with MVCU, working for the first year. There is also a lot of students, and it's quite popular. Bioengineering, safety and sustainable development, nature management. There are programs trained in foreign languages, on geoecology and modern environmental studies, together with other universities. On top list of our programs, there is a joint program with Palermo and some other foreign partners. Maybe we will just refocus to other countries now, but together with our Italian partners and our partners in the Russian Federation, we held a lot of educational programs. We have trained a lot of specialists. We invite international experts from Italy, Slovenia, and other countries to the projects which have been mentioned by the previous speaker. Also, our 30 years experience on training specialists for ecological security. What can be said here is the first ecological faculty in Russia. We've been working for 30 years already, and we have already over 3,000 graduates from 30 countries of the world. And some of our graduates are taking leading positions in Africa, in Asia, in South America, and they take part in our joint events. Currently, we have a number of applications on organization of our work on the calculation of greenhouse gas emissions, and we are prepared to invite our Russian partners for joint work, because the volume of work is very, very big, and we are prepared to work together with possible partners. Also, continuous education programs. We have author programs also on Russian and international platforms. Over 10 mass open online courses. You can get acquainted with them. Domestic trainers, practitioners, and foreign experts are our teachers, and currently at our ecological institute we have several specialists from Indonesia, Italy, high rating experts in the field of greenhouse gases and usage of modern methods in work with water resources and so on. We have a lot of opportunities on attraction of foreign experts for training personnel. Our institute is responsible for holding various events in metrics, green metrics program, and we have been the 26th in the world by the results of 2022 and leader among the green universities in Russia since 2014. We are the basic university in ecology, in the SCO networking university. We also have webinars, seminars, etc., etc., and the International Center for Sustainable Development, Energy Development under UNESCO auspices, and the German International Center, and so on. The practice of our research and consultancy work is providing the cooperation with Russian state bodies and research organizations and business structures. Among them, we can mention Vni Ekologia, Rosprirоднадзор, Gazprom, Kamaz, and so on. Vernadsky Foundation, Rosatom, PACAREA. We are the member of the consortium of PACAREA on scientific provision of the cycle of programs. We have educational programs for continuous training, and the development plan also further for continuous training of our specialists who are working on our green fields and organizes this work. We also have organized the body for validation and certification of gases emission. Currently, we have 15 applications for validation and certification. You can go to the website of our university and get acquainted with what we are doing there, and the management of our university is providing means for the supporting of all this works. We work together with the Russian Academy of Sciences, with the profile departments of the scientific research institutes, including the Russian Research University, MGIMO, and other universities. We work with the best experts who can offer their own programs, which will help our country to develop according to the new technological projects and various programs. We also, within our ecological university, we have several basic chairs, such chairs as the chair of the Roslехознадзор, also of the Institute of Russian Academy of Sciences, which is based in Sevastopol, the basic chair on the ecology of food and nutrition. We also train some new modern specialists who use all the new standards appearing according to our legislation. Innovational solutions are also welcomed. And what are our suggestions? Is organization of continuous training for specialists who are working in the field of computing of the greenhouse gas emissions, setting up the series of educational trainings programs, informational website for popularization of the results of research, organization of participation of foreign experts in our educational programs, organization of our educational programs and promotion of them on the international markets. And dear colleagues, we always are happy to see you. We are happy to communicate with you. Once again, I want to thank you on behalf of the University of People's Friendship for this wonderful conference. And that is it, perhaps. Thank you very much. Thank you, Elena. We hope that we are going to work with you also and all the rest. Of the people who are present here, we can see that you are a leader in this training, and we would like to transfer now to the discussion of our experience. The next speaker is Mr. Karimov, Rinat Karimov. He will tell us how here in this republic we are planning to work in the field of accreditation, in the field of computation of greenhouse emissions.
Hello, everyone, dear colleagues and listeners, and reporters and participators. I think it will be hard to reduce timing because our colleagues from Moscow on this topic, we can say, had a really open answer for it. Sorry for that. And what about the validation verification and the reports? Well, due to that, since starting with next year, our huge enterprises that are the source of greenhouse emissions will have to give reports, including, and will be able also to report the climatic green projects to reduce those emissions. So there is a necessity that appears, the necessity of assessment of emissions. And what about the reports is the verification. What about the projects? If it's on the stage of project is a validation. And furthermore, it's release and verification. So due to the fact that our region reach on enterprises, oil, gas, and energetic complex and other sectors. So last year we have aimed to go to there should be a regional agency that, because today we understand it's 13 agencies under validation verification, and once those requirements will get into power, we're going to have a huge flow of reports, and the region, it will be easy for the regions to have their own agencies. Of course, we can't set up the priorities, but anyway, that would be very easy and comfortable. So I already listed you the tasks. Beside the main task, we have the validation verification tasks, and then we pursue other tasks to study this experience, the procedures that we can say that came to us from the outside, and taking into account the fact that the start of this year we had questions if there's going to be this agenda, this common trend or world trend, maybe from the sides of the Europe. But anyway, I think that our government took right decision in this direction, and we should not stop, and we should continue, and we have to report the carbonite report. And we pursue our own goals, and we understand that. we have everything from the outside that concerns the emissions and the greenhouse gases, the melt of the freeze, and from our point of view, it's truly an ecology. And some powers in the world created it as a tool of economy. And for a long time, I can give you an example that for a long time that price for the carbon fuels were created, and there were created some alternative energy, and the prices were set due to the fact that to the green fuel. And now we have a situation when the raw materials are the prices are getting more expensive, and the world's producers start to feel the start to fight with the other companies, industries. So they want to finance their own alternative energetics. So in the future they would try to limitate and to refuse our own fuel. But I'm not sure that we have to accept the rules, but we have to understand, because it's necessary, because in the future when everything will work, it should not happen in a way that all our carbonate quotas will be transferred to the export. There should not be such situation that for the next year the reduction of the carbonate quotas for the external partner, for example, the metallurgy, would reduce the interest of the agricultural, of the livestock farming because of the less emissions. You know, that mechanism, it have to be worked out, it have to be worked on our own territory, and we have to work in that direction. And we also want to develop in that direction, to give our own ideas and opinions, and to give our own ideas and solutions how to advance those requirements. For example, now we have our own requirements, but acts and norms are there. We lack of them. Because they want me to be faster, I want to say we did a huge amount of work. We did the same work on the last forum, and we set our goals, and we started the preparation. We trained our experts, and including the colleagues that we had a speech before. We have a huge knowledge, and we created a big team and the subsectors, and from the documentational point of view, we finished the preparations, and the next stage is to make an application, and we passed through all the verifications, and we passed some technical moments, and we hope for the positive decision. Once we have it, our region will have its own agency that is concentrated on the oil energetic sector. Why? Because most of the specialists are from USA too, STU. So probably, if we have some time, I can tell, but don't want to repeat because my colleagues already mentioned those issues and problems. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we can say that we have a procedure of creating a center already having passed, so we just want the approval to start the work. Yes, to be honest, we're just waiting for the final decision, but the problem was that it's not a secret, it's some technical issues of my application for work, if I'm working at the university or no. That's probably some serious issue. But the work has been done. We accumulated the knowledge, and beside the results, we finish our work. So the next reporter, Nazarov Alexey Mikhailovich, on the biotechnology. And I would like to ask you to be fast. Good day, dear colleagues, dear participants. I'll just tell you briefly about our approach to the biological approach to solve the ecological and the climatic change problems. So, to be honest, the task was simple.
To
solve the climatic problem issues and problems that concerns related to ecology. The territories that were polluted by oil and other toxics, they are they exist for a long time, you know, and solutions are as well. But to connect to the climatological thing, we are working on this issue, and we try to look at it in complex. So our main instrument tools are bacteria, bio, to solve the ecological problems, and climatic. So the bacteria that allow to grow the plantation, first of all the forest, the trees, and what I mean, so the plants are growing. First of all, it's winter trees, and they absorb the carbon dioxide, and they change the and there is the concentration of the carbonite is solving, and cleaning ecosystems. The biggest problem is the sewages. It's like thousands or millions of tons, and the work of the bacteria and those tons becomes a good bioelements for the harvesting the ground. And they are with a bacterial program. They give the growth to forest recovery of the lungs of the planet, and the GHG reduces. So this is the scheme of refining.
Очистка тяжелых металлов.
Cleaning of the heavy metals using the solutions that absorbs and the heavy metals, and we receive the chemicals to recover the forest.
Проблема очистки
and the problem of the ground recovery and cleaning, and also connected to the climatic problems, and biopreparation allows us to clean the waters and the grounds that were polluted by oil and different substances. And this is as the additional fertilizer, and the addition with the bacteria that allow for the plants to grow, the dry. We reach that complex ecology and climatic changes. This is the picture of before and after those bacteria worked. The territory was cleaned after it was polluted by the oil, and it reduced to almost like to 15%, and the concentration of oil pollution.
Вот
These are the couple of words on the bacteria that they give the growth for the plants. First of all, in the climatological process of the trees, these bacteria of the Xendomonas, they work on a few mechanisms. They give the growth, stimulizes the hormones for the growth, and they work on the hormone level. And to be clear, all the bacteria I'm talking about, all the solutions that are used to solve these issues are created from the microflora. They're not genetically modified. There is no danger at all for the environment of our bacterial solutions do not represent any harm. So we take off the stress of the drought, and there's a complex work of the bacteria, and the plants are battle with the drought, and the growth and stimulation becomes very, very effectively. And we did some experiments on the pine tree, and it was up to 150% of the growth in comparison with the control of our Euro we mean the bacteria and gumat. And pineapple and these bacteria showed good results up to 200%. Thus, concluding, using those modern methods in usage and solving the climatic problems are possible. And we showed it in our experiments, and those researches will be continued, and we are, as to say, advertise it to our colleagues. Thank you very much. And our last speaker for today, Ekaterina Alexandrovna, docent of Department of Geology, Hydrometallurgy, and Geoecology. Thank you.
Good day, dear colleagues. I will try to make it short. May I have my presentation? Well, I will tell you about the example of the research which is taking place in the northeastern part of the Republic, but in fact it's taking the whole territory of the geopark and 3 sites which are the parts of the carbon range and represent the agricultural lands which are becoming covered with woods. What's characteristic is the trend towards the growth of temperatures, average temperatures, and so we decided to see how it is reflected on the plants and on the soil. That's why we used the special data sets for measuring temperatures and humidity. Then we compared the data with the data from the meteor station, and you can see that there is a certain correlation. Meteor station is located a little bit more to the north, and well, our data were placed in the soil, and meteor station is measuring air. Then what we were interested in was the application of distance methods for measuring temperatures. That's why we used the space pictures taken from the space. And this shows how you can calculate the data from the spaceships, and here we can see and knowing the temperature which was taken by the satellite. We compared our data with the data from the satellite, and well, we can see the dependence here as well, very clear dependence. And in winter, snow isolates the soil and the surface of the soil, and it does not correlate. But when there is no snow, this dependence can be seen very well. And based on these pictures and the analysis we used, we have built the maps of the temperatures on the territory of the site, and everything is explanatory, can be explained why somewhere the soil is warmer, somewhere it is not that warm. Well, in the mountains they are cooler, etc., etc. Then why did we do it? Because there is in this geopark, the birch trees are sick in a way, and we have compared the temperatures and the the places where this EURASIAN is spread, this disease of birch trees. And it was our suppositions were confirmed. Confirmed the birch trees suffer this EURASIAN dropsy disease. Well, unfortunately, we are short of time. Very soon there will be another session. I hope that our meeting was very useful for you. If you are interested, we can send you all the materials and presentations, and you will also have a chance to contact our speakers. Thank you once again. Thank you until the meetings.